I want to talk about telepathy. What is telepathy? Most people think of it as some kind of psychic power, or maybe they don't believe it's real. But before we go on to telepathy, we have to first understand what is language. Language, or communication, is starts off as a feeling or a sense, and that feeling or a sense then becomes a thought pattern, which then becomes words or sounds, right? Sound, vibrations of sound. For instance, if you see a bird in the sky, first there's a recognition of the bird, which brings up a certain sense or feeling. Then the thought form comes up and says bird, and then we say bird, right? Or we can apply that to any other type of communication. But without that feeling arising, there would not be a word or sound to describe that, right? And the interesting thing is, not every language has a word for every feeling or sense. Like the Eskimos have like 100 words or something for a snowflake, right? That's because whatever type of snowflake that they've witnessed creates a certain sense or feeling for them, so they have a word for that, right? So I'm Korean, and in the Korean language there's a lot of different words for frustration, certain feeling. And if we were to translate that into English, there's only one word, frustration. But there's many different aspects or facets of it depending on the context and the situation. So sometimes it's easier for me to express something through Korean because there's no way to express it through English. So telepathy then is language prior to the thought form or prior to assigning a word. It's just that sense that arises in us. So telepathy is actually much more direct and efficient than language, because telepathy is universal. If I can communicate to you that sense or feeling that's arising in me, then it doesn't matter if you're living in Africa or I'm here or a different language, because you will be able to feel that sense as well and understand that, versus me saying a word or translating that sense into a word. So yeah, I believe our human evolution is going that way, where in the future most of our communication is going to be done telepathically, simply because it's just more efficient and more direct and more accurate. And I also believe that psychics who can communicate with spirits on the other side that have passed on are communicating telepathically through symbols and feeling or sense that becomes translated into a symbol, because there's no language. You can't, somebody who's died, they're not speaking English. The mind isn't there. So there's no words. It's just feelings and intuition that's coming through, right? And I also believe that when we die, when we're on the other side, and we're, in the form of energy, right? We're not going to have this body anymore. We're going to be in an energetic soul form or whatever. That's how we would communicate with each other, through telepathy, through sense or feelings, as opposed to speaking a certain language, right? Because there's no English, or what's the main language spoken, on the other realm. So I just thought this was kind of a fun topic, interesting topic to think about and talk about, because it's already happening around us. I mean, how many times have you thought about somebody and then they called you? That thought or sense or feeling of that person arises, and that other person maybe had the same feeling or sense arise either before or after, maybe even at the same time, and then one person calls the other person because that sense came up, right? Or sometimes if you're hanging out with somebody and you're like, oh, I'm hungry, I'm so hungry, and the other person's like, I was just thinking that, I was thinking the same thing. How's that possible? Is that just pure coincidence, or could you have communicated telepathically? That sense of hunger was communicated through the other person, sense of hunger. I've actually had experiences where I was at a restaurant and I was looking at ordering a certain thing on the menu, like, that looks really good, and I was thinking about ordering it, and then my friend was thinking the same thing. I was just thinking that, or that looked good to me, or whatever it was, and I got the intuitive sense that, yeah, they had the same exact type of feeling that I did. So yeah, telepathy is already happening around us all the time, and I think the more we notice, the more we become aware of it, maybe the better we get at it, you know. And I also believe when people talk about having psychedelic experiences where they're hanging out with somebody and they were having the same thought and feelings, they knew exactly what it was without saying it, and they were tripping out and laughing about it. I think that's exactly what's happening. So anyways, just thought this was a fun topic to talk about. All right, bye.